So you hear about government shutdowns all the time, right? But what happens when it's not just about political squabbling, but about whether millions of people can actually put food on the table? That's exactly what's at the heart of this huge dispute over SNAP funding.
Take a look at this number, 42 million. I mean, let that sink in for a second. That isn't just some random statistic. That's 42 million Americans. We're talking families, kids, seniors who rely on the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP, just to eat. The scale of what's at stake here is just massive.
So this really brings us to the big question, doesn't it? When the political gears in Washington grind to a halt and we get a shutdown, what's the real-world impact on the millions of people who literally depend on these programs to survive?
Okay, so to really get our heads around this, we're going to break it all down. First, we'll look at the high-stakes standoff itself. Then, we'll dive into Speaker Johnson's position and the counterargument against it. After that, we'll examine the actual evidence and finally, try to understand the political endgame that's supposedly at play here.
All right, first up, the standoff. The way the source material presents this is pretty stark. It says the shutdown has basically created this impossible choice, pitting two essential things against each other: extending healthcare subsidies from the Affordable Care Act or funding the SNAP benefits that, as we just saw, feed millions of families.
But, and this is a big but, the source we're looking at argues that this is a false choice. The argument is that this isn't a real dilemma at all. It's a crisis that's been manufactured on purpose, a political strategy to literally pit the sick against the hungry.
So, you have to ask, what's the official justification for this? Let's dig into Speaker Johnson's position, because according to him, it all comes down to a really specific legal argument.
Okay, so here's a direct quote from the speaker, as laid out in the source. He's essentially saying, I reject the whole premise. His point is that his hands are legally tied. He's claiming that for SNAP, you can't just tap into a contingency fund unless Congress already authorized it ahead of time.
So, to put it simply, the claim is this: the administration legally cannot use an emergency fund to pay for SNAP benefits while the government is shut down. Full stop.
But is that actually true? Is there really no other way? Because the source material we're analyzing here presents a pretty powerful counter-argument that completely challenges that entire premise.
And here it is. The source flat out says that a contingency fund does exist. And not only that, but it was actually used by the Trump administration during the shutdown back in 2019.
Okay, that's a pretty big claim. So what's the evidence? Let's start examining the proof that the source brings to the table.
So check this out. The first piece of evidence presented is a headline from Fox News, and the source points this out because this headline apparently shows that the Trump administration did exactly this. They used a contingency fund back in 2019. This sets a major precedent, right?
And this really lays out the core contradiction that the source is getting at. In 2019, the Trump administration reportedly used these funds to keep SNAP going. But now in the current shutdown, we're being told that same option is legally impossible. So the source is basically asking, what changed?
And it's not just that one headline. The source also brings in an analysis from the Center for Budget and Policy Priorities, and their findings are pretty direct. They say the claim that there's no money is, quote, contrary to the plain language of the law. They point out that it contradicts what the Trump administration did, it contradicts USDA documents, and it's even been confirmed by the GAO. And get this, they say past administrations from both parties have always found a way to provide benefits.
And if that wasn't enough, we've even got a judicial perspective here. The source pulls this quote from a federal judge who basically just asks a common-sense question. It's hard for me to understand how this isn't an emergency when there is no money. You know, it just adds another layer to the argument that a solution is available.
Okay, so if the legal argument is as shaky as the source makes it out to be, what's really going on here? Why the stalemate? Well, according to the source, it all boils down to the political endgame.
The theory laid out in the source is that this whole fight, it's not actually about SNAP. It's about gaining leverage. The idea is, if you create a massive crisis around food assistance, you can put so much pressure on everyone that you force the government to reopen without ever having to make a deal on that other big issue, the ACA healthcare subsidies.
And here's the supposed playbook, broken down. Step 1. Create an urgent crisis by threatening people's food benefits. Step 2. Point the finger and blame the other party for all the harm that's about to happen. Step 3. Use that public pressure to force the government back open, but on your own terms. And the final result? Step 4. You get to sidestep any future pressure to negotiate on those ACA subsidies. So, when you lay it all out, what we're looking at is way more than just another political dispute. It's a high-stakes game where the source makes it clear that millions of lives could be on the line. And that really leaves us with one big lingering question to think about. In a political stalemate like this, who ends up bearing the ultimate cost?